This is Crowmore with TGN, welcoming you to another World of Warcraft Cataclysm beta video. This is part 16 of the 22-part series DPS Rundown, and today we're covering the Retribution Paladin. Well, now, this is an interesting spec in rotation. It's actually pretty complicated and has some decisions to make on the glyphs. So let's get started here. First thing you're going to notice on your tree is that most of the DPS talents are easy to pick. That's something that they've been doing with all the talent trees. Leaving about 2 talent points in Retribution. Actually, excuse me, 1 talent point in Retribution, then 1 more talent point out here. And you can put them in whatever you want. I put them in Acts of Sacrifice, just thinking that this cleansing, that cleanse may give me a little bit more mobility in some fights. Selfless Healer is another excellent choice, though it does use up Holy Power to use Word of Glory. So you might want to be careful with that. But if you find yourself using Word of Glory a lot in Rage to help with the healing, then it's something you can do, although it does take away from your DPS. Then Guardian's Favor is for protection and eye for an eye. This doesn't really proc as much as you'd like it to do. If this actually did reflect boss damage properly, it would be pretty incredible, but of course it does not, because that would be insanely overpowered. Just think about it. Now for your other abilities here, for your other talent points, you do have a couple other options that you could put 1 talent point in Divinity to get a slight increase in your healing received to help your healers, and that's certainly fine. And not much else, I guess. The rest of your talent points are more or less set in stone. There's not a lot of other choice to have besides those 2. Now, I want to highlight Divine Purpose real quick in case you forgot what it does here. It does give you extra Holy Power on proccing on all these different abilities, including Holy Wrath, and that's why Holy Wrath is actually going to be part of our rotation, believe it or not. But anyway, we'll get back to that later. Glyphs, there's some difficult decisions to make in Prime. I'm going to skip those and come back to them and go straight to Major and Minor. I just chose all glyphs that reduce mana costs. Even though you're not going to have mana problems, it's just nice to never have mana problems. So I just picked the mana glyphs. There's really nothing else here to get in Major glyphs. You could get Divine Protection because this would actually be pretty nice for some encounters where you get hit with lots and lots of spell damage. It would help your healer. That's something to consider. Cleansing. Make your cleansing cheaper for the same reason I have these other ones. And then there's another one. What's the other good one? Oh, yeah. Lay on Hands just allows you to use your Lay on Hands a little bit more often. You could save a tank with that. So that's something to consider as well. However, none of these glyph choices actually make an effect on my DPS test. But if I was going into a raid, actually, now the more I think about it, the more I'm definitely going to be taking Divine Protection for a raid. That's pretty nice, because by default it does 20% all damage. This makes it 40% magical, but no physical. And magical damage as a Ret Paladin is definitely going to be the thing you're going to be taking most of the time. You're going to take very little physical damage. So anyway, the Prime Glyphs. Now this is where the difficult choices are. There's one glyph that I'd say for sure you want. It's Templar's Verdict. Increases damage to Templar's Verdict. This is your #1 damage ability, so this is a no-brainer. Your other 2 a little tougher. You got Seal of Truth. I think this is probably the best second glyph. It increases a massive amount of expertise. This is pretty much just like adding a huge amount of stats to your gear. Even if your expertise capped already, you can just reforge out of it. So that actually makes this glyph pretty dang valuable. But it's still, if you get up to super high levels of gear and you absolutely cannot reforge out of expertise, that may happen. We don't know. We've only seen 1 tier of gear. So in the future, this might maybe become a bad glyph. But moving on from that, the 3rd slot, there's a couple of good choices. Judgment increases the damage on Judgment, but this Judgment is a pretty low amount of your damage. You're mainly using it for Holy Power procs and mana regen, so I wouldn't worry about this one. You got Glyph of Exorcism. This is one that I tested, and it didn't do very well. It didn't add actually 20% more damage to my Exorcism. It only added like 7 or 8%, and that was mainly, I think, because of it was casting it twice in a row and not getting the full length of each dot. But I was trying to avoid that. When I did the test, I did like 3 or 4 million damage, and I was really conscious about that, and it actually made the rotation a lot more difficult. But I still wound up getting only a fraction of the DPS. I was looking at even the tick rate and everything, and the tick seemed too small. So this could be bugged, actually, or it could be that it doesn't take into effect some buffs. Maybe it doesn't take into effect Inquisition even. I'm not sure. So I can't really tell you for sure what's going on with this glyph. In the future, this may get buffed or it may get fixed, and it may wind up being the best glyph for your 3rd slot. But for now, I'm going to go with Crusader Strike. I actually had a slight DPS boost from using Crusader Strike glyph with the extra crit over your Exorcism, even though Exorcism does more overall damage than Crusader Strike, and 20% extra damage seems like a lot. I just went with Crusader Strike. Turned out to be the better one. So anyway, enough talking here. Let's look at this rotation. I'm just going to do a real quick. Now, your priorities Of course, you always want to make sure you hit Crusader Strike when it's up. That's super important. The only time you wouldn't hit Crusader Strike is if you need to use up your Holy Power. Now, I'm not using my other spells just because I want to make this really simple here. Once you're up to 3, you have to keep your Inquisition up. Now, your Holy Power, your Holy damage is like 55% of your damage, so this buff is very important. You have to keep this buff up at all times. So, I got an Art of War proc. My Judgment. Now, of course, I'm not really doing this very efficiently. I'm just trying to show what happens here. Okay, Light of Dawn procced, and this allows you to use, this is your mastery, allows you to hit a free Templar's Verdict, essentially, or a free Inquisition, and keep your Holy Power. So, I did that. Now, the interesting thing about Inquisition is since it's only holy damage, and your Crusader Strike is not included in that, if your Inquisition falls off early, you could wait to refresh it until you get 3 holy power. You don't need to just like get it out as fast as possible, because as long as you just don't use any holy damage, you won't actually lose any total DPS. Of course, if you have 0 holy power, if your Inquisitions run out, and you have Art of War up, then you're probably going to lose DPS. So it's not like you want to make that a matter of your rotation, but sometimes you can just get really slow on the holy power because a lot of your holy power is based on procs. So anyway. So, okay, let me try a little harder here. Oh, what I'm going to do, okay, I just got another Light of Dawn. I got 3. My Inquisition's fine, so I'm going to hit Wolf Verdict. I still got 3. Templar Verdict. I shouldn't hit that Judgment. I should hit Crusader Strike first. Now, when your Crusader Strike's down, you pretty much only get 1 ability before it's time to Crusader Strike again. And that should be a Judgment, and then it should be a Holy Wrath if your Judgment's down. And then, oh no, I'm sorry, it should be Exorcism first. Exorcism is your highest priority ability out of all of your non-Crusader Strike, basically your non-Holy Power abilities. Because you always want to make sure you refresh Inquisition, you always make sure you want to use Templar's Verdict when you have 3 and you have Inquisition up. You want to make sure you hit Crusader Strike whenever it's up. And then after that, it comes to your filler abilities, which is Exorcism, Judgment, and then Holy Wrath in that order. Now, you can technically get a little bit of damage out of Consecrate, but it's so poor, it's so bad. I mean, you're very rarely going to get down to the point where you're going to be using your 4th tier filler ability. So, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'd rather just wait, you know, for Crusader Strike to come off cooldown and not press any buttons. At least I can, you know, take a breather or something. Now, you're probably wondering about Zealotry versus Avenging Wrath. Should you stack them up? Since Zealotry allows you to use you know, your Templar's Verdict faster or whatever. Well, here's the thing. If you are using Zealotry, you're pretty much hitting nothing but Crusader Strike and Templar's Verdict with only the occasional filler. What that means is that you're not really getting the most out of Avenging Wrath because you're not going to be able to hit Hammer of Wrath every time it comes off cooldown. Combining the two is, you know, nice for spike damage, but overall DPS, it doesn't actually help you. What you want to do is split them up, do Zealotry first. After Zealotry runs out, hit Avenging Wrath, and then you can work Hammer of Wrath into your rotation. So anyway, let me just get all my stuff to drop off. I have to spend all this holy power as well. Wait for Seal of Truth to run out, or Censure, or whatever. Clear out my recount, and we'll do the real test. Okay, and it's results time, and when I... Oh, thanks a lot, Recount. When I... Oh, it's so annoying. There we go. Okay, when I quit, it was actually at 6,400. It dropped all the way down because of the ticks from Seal of Truth after I stopped attacking. So, 6,400 is our number. It's pretty low, and unfortunately, the raid numbers do pan out with this. We bring raid Rep Paladins pretty frequently in our raids, and they do... I'm not saying they do badly. They do fine. It's just that they're outclassed by Fury Warriors and Death Knights, although we don't get very many Death Knights in our raids. They're outclassed by Hunters, especially Survival Hunters right now, and some of the other classes that are really like at the top. So maybe Rets could use a little bit of a boost. There's some things that are rotation are a little awkward that they could maybe shore up, and it would improve the class overall. But anyway, so our breakdown. Templar's Verdict, #1 ability, not a surprise. Crusader Strike, Exorcism, and Melee, splitting up the rest. And then Censure and Seal of Truth are the same thing. So this is actually, what is that, about 19%? Yeah, about 19%, or 18%, excuse me. 18% for these two. So really it's Templar's Verdict, then Seal of Truth. Then these three at about 14 to 15 each. And then everything else splits up the rest. Now, keep in mind, I mentioned that your damage is like, let's see, what is it here? 14, 15, and 20 is your physical damage. So that's about 50% of your damage being physical, 50% of your damage being holy. That means that only half of it's affected by Inquisition. Hammer of Wrath, didn't get too many Hammer of Wraths, only had, what, 2, I think, Avenging Wrath, so you can't really get that many out of this ability. But it's still powerful when you do get to use it. It actually hits like a truck. So whenever Avenging Wrath is up, this is definitely top priority. It even out DPS's Templar Verdict, believe it or not. That's pretty sick. So yeah, Hammer of Wrath, very good. And it's affected by Inquisition, so make sure Inquisition's up before you hit Avenging Wrath. Make sure it's maxed out, so you don't have to think about it. So yeah, the numbers played out pretty much exactly how as I pictured them they would from the test, from the other tests I've done, finagling with all the little glyphs and the talents and everything, and trying to get the best out of this character. So final conclusions about the Brett Paladin. It's he's slightly behind most of the other DPS, but he is above rogues at least, and he has a lot of great utility, such as the ability to stay alive and heal himself that other DPS don't have. So overall, it's a very good class, and I still recommend playing him. I just hope they give just a little bit of a nudge on his DPS. So that's it for Ret Paladin, episode 16 of DPS Rundown. This is Chromar with TGN. As always, thanking you for watching and asking you to please rate, please comment, and please subscribe.